What up, cucks? It's your boy, the hater up in this piece. Once again, I'm doing an on-the-go video. Figured I'd bring that back for my own pleasure. You know what I'm saying? And I was driving to a place today, and I thought to myself, WrestleMania around the corner, literally around the corner. I mean, we're talking a matter of days here, you know what I mean? At this time next week, we'll be talking about how Cody Rhodes appeared at WrestleMania or on Raw or wherever the hell he's going to appear. You know what I mean? That's how close we are to WrestleMania. And I was thinking, like, to be fair, I haven't really watched SmackDown in a while, and like, so correct me if I'm wrong, cuts, you know, but it feels like the matches just aren't enough, right? WrestleMania matches, in my opinion, nowadays fall into one of two categories, and both categories are crap. Category one is going to be your mandatory matches. You know what I mean? These are like your Randy Ortons, your AJ Styles. Like, there's a few people that are up the card to a certain point where you cannot preclude them from being on the card, from being at WrestleMania. In other words, you have to have them. Like, you can't have a WrestleMania without Randy Orton, right? If he's on the roster and he's healthy, he's going to be at WrestleMania. So the question then becomes, where do we put Randy Orton in this card? Now, it should be clear why that's not the right way to go about making a match, right? Or making a card, even. And it's very self-evident, in my opinion. It should be the other way around. It should be, what are we going to do this year? And then the question is, okay, who's going to fit into this role best, right? That's how it used to be. And that's how it is sometimes, rarely nowadays, but that's how it still is, right? So, for example, you have something like the Royal Rumble, you know? You don't book around the Royal Rumble. You book the person who's going to win the Rumble. You already have the Rumble lined up. You're like, all right, this year we're going to have the Rumble like every other year. Who's going to win is the question, right? Now, imagine if you had to do it backwards. Imagine if it was like, all right, we need to make Jeff Hardy champion. All right, so we're going to have to make a ladder-based pay-per-view so he can win it in a ladder match. You know what I mean? That would be ass backwards, right? That's what's happening with WrestleMania. You know, it's like Randy Orton. I cannot believe it. I'm not even joking, guys. Motherfuckers, I can't believe it. Randy Orton still is part of RK Bro. I thought this was going to be like a 2-month, 3-month tag team. Maybe they're doing well in merchandise sales. Who the fuck knows? But it's very odd to me. To me, the only way that this match has any kind of value is if Randy Orton does the quote-unquote unthinkable, a.k.a. the predictable, and RKO's Riddle. Or vice versa, maybe Riddle turns heel and attacks Randy. Something needs to happen. Otherwise, it's just a tag team match. You know, for comparison, like on SmackDown, they're going to have like Ricochet versus Humberto Carrillo and Angel Garza, I think, right? In a triple threat for the IC title. It's like, that's the same level of a match as the tag team match with Randy Orton. The only difference and the only reason why it's on pay-per-view is because of Randy Orton. You know? Because no one else cares about like people like Riddle and Street Profits. Like, nobody cares, really. I mean, I like Riddle, but the fact is, like, he's not a draw or anything like that. So that's like half your matches are these mandatory matches where it's like, what are we going to do? We have to put like this person on the card. There's no way around it. Find a match for him. Do it, jabrones. And then the other half is like, typically I'd be okay with this, but it's gotten to the point where it's becoming ridiculous. The special attraction matches. Nowadays, the booking is so lazy that all they do is basically say, this is a special attraction match. That's literally the entire story behind AJ Styles and Edge. It's like the whole promo, the whole program began with Edge coming out and basically saying like, WrestleMania needs me. Like, I'm Edge. You know what I mean? So recognize, I'm going to be at WrestleMania. Like, do you remember when people had to earn the right to be at WrestleMania? Now, I understand. Edge shouldn't have to earn the right. He's Edge. It actually makes sense, kayfabe-wise, for him to come out and be like, who's going to wrestle me at WrestleMania? Same thing with Taker back in the day, where it's like, Taker doesn't have to earn, you know, the shot. People have to earn the right to face Taker. So, that kind of made sense to me. You know what I mean? All that kind of made sense. However, try hard to make a feud. Edge, you know, turning evil and being like, I'm Edge, like, I'm the number one. Like that's not entertaining anymore. It's not compelling, you know? As a matter of fact, in my opinion, it's too early for Edge to have any kind of character development because even though he's been back for several years, he's had like 5 matches. So for him to turn, it just doesn't feel right. But that's not here nor there. That's a personal decision, you know what I'm saying? Like whoever writer decided that's what's going to happen, that's fine. I can't fault them for making that choice is what I'm saying. But I can fault them for making a subpar wrestling program. Like, for example, when they had the greatest wrestling match ever, Edge versus Orton, right? There was at least a storyline there, like a compelling one that felt like a WrestleMania caliber storyline. And I understand there's a storyline between Edge and AJ Styles too. But it's not a good one, right? The only good storyline that we have, obviously, is Reigns and Brock Lesnar. And even that one, like, it's not this like super well-developed storyline. The only reason why it's good is because it's been like for years that these guys have been feuding with each other, right? So, you know, like the premise is that if you watch wrestling for the last few years, you've been wanting to see Lesnar and Reigns again, because Lesnar is like clearly the most dominant guy in the last like 10 years, and Reigns is now the most dominant guy now, the most dominant guy in the last 3-5 years, right? So it's like who's better, you know? And they've had a match already at WrestleMania where Lesnar won, and they've had like a match that was interrupted by Rollins, who then ended up winning the match. So Reigns has not beaten Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania, even though he was pretty much positioned twice to do so, right? Both times, the premise was Roman Reigns is going to beat Lesnar, right? And both times he failed, he came up short. This is the time he will do it. That's probably one of the worst parts of the match, the fact that, like, I mean, I don't really see a way in Brock Lesnar winning this match. I just don't see it. But that's neither here nor there. It might happen, right? But anyways, the match is going to be good for the reasons that I just stated. The problem is that you have all these edge-type wrestlers, right? Randy Orton, CM Punk back in the day. You have these guys like Rey Mysterio is another one, where like they're good wrestlers, they're popular wrestlers. You know, good being obviously a relative term here. Like CM Punk is not good. Rey Mysterio is great, you know what I'm saying? But you have these guys, and the whole point of them is like they're gonna have a good match, right? Like you have the Rey Mysterio match at WrestleMania, it's gonna be a good match. Like I'm looking forward to it, even though like it has Logan Paul. I'm looking forward to it because it also has Rey Mysterio, right? That's the idea of how the booking goes. It's like Rey Mysterio, he's gonna produce a good match, and that's really all you need to know. Now there's Rey Mysterio matches like Rey Mysterio versus CM Punk, right? Which was a good match. I wouldn't say great match, which was a good match with a great storyline. And then Rey versus Cody, which was like a good match with like not a great storyline, but a storyline nonetheless, you know? And then you have like Eddie Guerrero versus Rey, which was a match with, let's be real, like no storyline at that point. It was basically like these two guys are best friends, they're tag team champions, they're gonna wrestle each other. But the entire Eddie Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio WrestleMania match, the entire point was this is gonna be a good match. That was the entire booking of that match, was it's gonna be a good match. You know, that's not enough. Even though that match is clearly the best of the three that I just mentioned, it's still not enough. You know, you need something to draw me in. With the Eddie and Rey Mysterio, the thing that drew people in was the inevitability of their tag team falling apart. Because anyone that watched wrestling at that point knew where that was headed, right? Oh, they're going to have a friendly match. Is Eddie Guerrero going to destroy him at WrestleMania? Or is it going to take a few months? Were the only two questions. Like, we knew that like that match was starting a feud. You know, typically feuds end at WrestleMania. That match was starting a feud. So even then, you could argue there was a storyline. But what's the storyline behind Omos and Lashley? You know what I'm saying? Like, who cares about that? That's like nobody wants to see that at all. Like, if there was a way to skip that match, I would skip it. You know, like, and end WrestleMania faster. I would skip it. I would actually choose to skip it. To me, it feels like a commercial. It's literally filler. Nobody cares. I like Lashley. You know, I think he's great. I mean, I guess I like Omos. Obviously I don't like him because he hasn't done anything, but, you know, I don't hate him yet, right? Typically, I would be interested in something like this if it was well prepared. But the idea is that, like, that match falls into the category of we need something for this guy. Falls into the first category. You know? Oh, what's Lashley going to do? I know, let's put him with Omos. Who cares who wins? Who cares who loses? It doesn't matter, right? Same thing with Randy Orton and Riddle. Who cares if they win or lose? It doesn't matter. You know? Who cares? Like they're not going to be known for RK Bro. That's not going to be in either one of the two's career highlights, most likely, right? So what I'm saying here is this. Since those matches don't make any sense, and they're just filler matches, we have to focus on the matches that do make sense. The special attraction ones, right? Like typically every year you'd have a Goldberg match at WrestleMania. You know, okay, fine. Fine, it's a special attraction, I get it. But even then, even with Goldberg, who doesn't care enough, he would try to make a story out of it. Nobody was interested in it, but he would try, right? Nowadays, they don't even try. The only thing that has any remote story is Lesnar versus Reigns. And no one cares if that match is a 3-minute squash match, if the match is a 30-minute, like, amazing display of wrestling, or if it's anywhere in between. It doesn't matter. What matters is a storyline. Good wrestling will never be enough to sell a pay-per-view. Good wrestling will never be enough to get anyone engaged with the pay-per-view and want to watch the next day. Good wrestling is boring. Nobody cares about that. Like, if people cared about good wrestling, ROH would be the #1 company, according to the fans, right? You know what I mean? Like, if people cared about good wrestling, it wouldn't matter if Daniel Bryan and Kevin Owens got signed to WWE. They could just go be good wrestlers in ROH, and they would need to be signed by WWE because they're good wrestlers, right? The cream should rise to the top, but it doesn't. I mean, obviously it does, but it's just a different kind of cream. You know, entertainment is what's needed. And in order, like, the one thing that wrestling has, the one advantage, I'm going to make a video about this specific point right now, later. The one advantage that wrestling has over any other sport, quote unquote, right, is that it's not a sport. People think that's a disadvantage. They're like, you watch wrestling, it's fake. That's why people watch wrestling. They watch it because it's fake, not in spite of it being fake. That's one thing people don't understand. People think like, oh, well, you know, you watch wrestling and you have to deal with the fact that it's fake. No, idiot. I watch wrestling because it's fake. That's what draws me in. The idea that because it's fake, now you can manipulate the story. You can manipulate the outcomes, right? Think about all these great UFC fights where there's been a clear path. Like, after person A fights person B, he's going to fight person C if he wins. And then it turns out that person B beats person A, and you're like, fuck, I brought person C to sit in the front row, and now I got nothing, right? That's what happened with Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz in their first fight. The point was, Conor McGregor was supposed to beat Nate Diaz, and then at 170, and then he was supposed to like challenge GSP, and they were gonna build towards that, right? But Conor lost, so now it's like shit. We spent all this time, all this thought, all this money to set this up, and it didn't work, right? So there you have it, cucks. There you have it. That's how it works sometimes. See what I'm saying? That's how it works sometimes. But in wrestling, you can control that. In wrestling, you have the capacity to control who the winner is and who the loser is. And as a direct result of that, you are capable of picking the right things. But when you have this huge advantage, when you have this asset of being able to manipulate the story, you should take advantage of it. You can't have this asset and then not do it, right? Like, the thing that makes wrestling different from UFC or from, you know, football or from any other kind of competition-based type of thing, right? Or at least, you know, that appears to be that way. The one thing that makes it different, that sets it apart, is the fact that it's unpredictable, like everything else, but it's predictable by those that are in the know. And in the sense that you can make predictions and be wrong, but your predictions are not crazy. Whereas if you watch, like, I don't know, the Cowboys versus the Giants, right? There's only two predictions. Cowboys win or Giants win. That's it. Right? In wrestling, you can be like, oh, this guy's going to come out. Oh, he might debut, you know. It spurs this kind of talks. But nobody's going to care if the effort isn't there, right? It's really that simple. You know, if you do not take care to give a storyline to everybody, you run the risk of having people like Ricochet in your company for 10 years who have done absolutely nothing. People like Sami Zayn, who for 10 years have done absolutely nothing, just taking a paycheck. They absolutely produced nothing. Like, do you think Kevin Owens has drawn one dime? Absolutely not. Nobody gives a shit. You could have taken him and put, like, Otis in there, and it would have been the same exact thing. He adds nothing, right? It's all about storytelling. And if you're not willing to tell a story, and I'm not blaming the wrestlers, right? It's not Damian Priest's fault that he has no storyline, right? It's not Finn Balor's fault that he has no storyline. But nowadays, people are just thinking, like, me and my friends were talking, he was like, they should do Finn Balor versus Damian Priest. It's right there for them. What does that even mean, it's right there for them? What does that mean? That means, like, oh, they're lazy, so just put it together and throw it on the card to give people a great match. I don't want to see a great match. Like, I know AJ Styles and Edge is going to be a great match. It might be the best match of the year. It's very possible, you know? Especially considering what Edge was able to do with Seth Rollins, right? I know it could be a great match, but the problem is I don't care. I don't want to see it. Like, I'm going to fast forward it. You know, like, if I watch WrestleMania with any kind of delay on the Peacock network, I'm going to fast forward it to the finish. I don't care if AJ Styles is going to hit the phenomenal form or not, because it has no bearing on what's going to happen. Whether Edge wins or AJ Styles wins, Monday Night Raw is going to be exactly the same. Nothing will change. And that's the problem. If something would change, I would watch it. I would be engaged and invested in it, right? And furthermore, if a wrestling match is based around a storyline, you can watch the match just to see the furthering of that storyline. What I mean by that is this. Let's say we have a storyline where one person banged another person's wife, right? And let's say the wife comes out of ringside, right? Or why use that hypothetical? Dudley Boyz versus TNA. The match, nobody cared about the match. They're both, like, Dudley was the best tag team. TNA is like, all right, whatever, right? But the point of the match was, is Bubba Ray, is he going to powerbomb Trish through the table? This could happen at any moment. You know, Bubba Ray and Trish could interact at any given moment during this match, before the match and after the match, right? So you watch the whole match, you're like, oh my God, is this it? Like, she gets on the apron, is this it? Is this when they grab her, right? You see what I'm saying? And the whole match was premised around that relationship between Trish Stratus, Bully Ray, and him wanting to put her through a table. So you're watching the match, you don't care when Tess hits the big boot on Devon and wins, or Bubba Ray, or whatever. I don't remember the finish. But the point is, you don't care about that. But you watch the whole match because anything can happen at any moment. And with all that being said, we don't have any of that at this year's WrestleMania. The only example is the main event. That's it. Like, think about that. If Cody Rhodes is going to debut and fight Seth Rollins, this should not be left to be announced at WrestleMania. You should book around this. You can build a feud. But why? When you can just lazily just be like, oh, Seth Rollins is going to come out, Vince is going to choose someone. The only way that would work is if Vince says this is the chosen one. Like, imagine if he says that. He's like, this is the guy. He's the future at the end. It's not Roman, it's Cody, right? Imagine if that happens. That'd be fucking crazy. But it's probably not going to happen. So what I'm saying is this. Great wrestling matches have never been enough, will never be enough, and no one's ever going to care enough to watch consistently just because there's great wrestling matches. That's the problem with AEW as well. ROH, all these companies. It's like you tune into like Dynamite, and you know the first 35 minutes of the show are going to be just like, it's going to be like Young Bucks versus like Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus, or some other match of that level, right? Some like upper mid-card type match with some sort of implications. That's going to be like 35, 40 minutes, if you count the entrances and everything, right? So it's like, what incentive do I have to tune in at 8 in the morning? I mean, at 8 in the morning, at 8 sharp. No incentive. I'll tune in at 8:15. The match isn't going to be over. It's going to be Jungle Boy waiting for the hot tag. Or probably Luchasaurus waiting for the hot tag, you know? Doesn't matter, right? But back in the day, when wrestling was amazing, right, you knew that at 8 o'clock on Fridays, or on Tuesdays back then, and 9 o'clock on Mondays, you better tune into Raw. Because the competition starts immediately. You better tune into Raw so you can see who's going to come out first and what they're going to say. And you can see like, the awesome things, the funny things, the clever things they're going to say and do, right? You know, you turn on Raw, I remember to this day, you turn on Raw, boom, The Raw comes out, and like everyone in WWF is doing like a strike against like DX, right? The Rock opens the show. Typically it's Triple H opening the show being like, I'm the game, you know, all that crap. But boom, you switch it up, it's memorable to this day. Hell, I'll take Triple H opening the show every day for 10 years versus watching like, you know, Lee Moriarty and Big Shotty Lee Johnson versus like Evan Bourne and, you know, the other one, the Evan Bourne's brother, whatever the fuck his name is, you know? So that's what I'm saying. We need things that are consistent and that are story-driven. Nobody cares about good wrestling. Otherwise, if people cared about good wrestling, Evan Bourne and like, you know, Colt Cabana would be like the best wrestlers in the world because everyone loves them, right? But nobody cares because they're boring. Nobody gives a shit about any of them, right? Think about that, cucks, and take care of yourself. Peace.